digital platform, a digital platform, a digital platform, a digital platform, a digital platform. Like-minded people, I like such kind of people. Here to network, these are my kind of people. I wanna grow, I wanna know, be it in the highs or low. Make me better than I was 2 days ago. Once I'm transformed, then I'll transform. All the leaders that I'm leading, I will transform. Make them better, make them good, make them icons. In the world out there, may they shine strong. That's my prayer, that's my hope, that's my plea too. Everybody listening to this fine tune. Lead the change, be the change in society. We can change, make the change a reality. People's lives are blurred, they need clarity. We're not playing, we're not dreaming, it's reality. Make the impact, you'll live a legacy. This is no football, no fantasy.
Bow down, we're breaking bounds. We're soaring high, beyond the skies. Bow, bow, we're breaking bounds. We're soaring high, beyond the skies.
They told me be resilient, the message sounded heaven sent. I never asked why, cause the message sounded relevant. In this time and age, it was evident. With a lot going on, we moved on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Baobab platform signature webinar titled Future of Work in Africa. My name is Angela Nantambi, the current Alumni in Residence Coordinator on the Baobab platform and the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program alumni from Ashesi University. So if we have Ashesi students or alum, please say hi in the chat. I'll be moderating this conversation with our panelists, Matt Grollnek, Surianarain, and Dorothy Nakaggwa, and more details about our panelists will follow later. Before we dive into this conversation, exciting conversations today, here are some housekeeping rules to keep us grounded during the event. Today's discussion will be translated into French simultaneously with captions to include our French community. The translation does not work on your phone, so we really encourage you to use your laptop if you have it next to you, if possible, to avoid any problems with the translation. And Credo Kaninda, the Special Projects Coordinator here at Baobab, will be available in chat to help you access the translation, just in case you have any struggles. And further details about how to access the French translation, look for the Show Captions button on the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom window, and select French if you want the captions translated from English into French. So those will be our instructions regards translations to French. And if you have any questions or comments, add them to either chat or the Q&A function, and our panelists will respond to as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. Now, before we get into today's discussion, I would like to share a personal story on the subject, which is the future of work in Africa. I still remember the day I got my first job. I was fresh out of college and full of excitement and optimism. Who is not after graduation? But the pandemic hit and I found myself working remotely, leading me to take on my first freelance job with Baobab. As I interacted with members of the platform, I learned about the different ways young people were obtaining work through various freelance channels. And one of the people I interacted with was Dorothy, who is the panelist today. And this experience made me question the traditional 9-to-5 work model. And I wondered if there was a better way to live and work. Now, as a graduate student who continues to work with Baobab, I believe that the gig economy provides opportunities for people to pursue their passions and find greater fulfillment in alternative ways of working. And as we move towards the future of work, I think more and more people will have the chance to partake in the opportunities provided by the gig economy and discover their own paths to fulfillment. Now, with that introduction about myself, I'll go ahead and introduce today's panelists before we dive into the conversation of the day. The first panelist we have is Matthew Grollnek. Matthew is the lead for employability and future of work for Mastercard Foundation. He's dedicated to harnessing the potential of frontier technologies to empower and create opportunities for young people across Africa. Prior to his full-time role at Mastercard Foundation, He honed his skills as a management consultant, working on strategy and impact investment initiatives across Africa. Matthew also served as the chief of operations for one of Zambia's largest IT companies, where he managed both in-person and remote teams. He holds a master's degree in international comparative education from Stanford University and an MBA from the African Leadership University. Welcome, Matt. We are so happy to have you today. The second panelist of the day is Dorothy Nakaggwa. She's a freelance copywriter. She specializes in writing sales and marketing copy for e-commerce brands. She has been a freelancer since 2019 and has worked with over 20 clients from 6 continents. Dorothy was a first cohort fellow of the Baobab Alumni in Residence Fellowship. Very nice experience working with her. And she's also an alumna of the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program at Makerere University. Dorothy enjoys spending her extra time reading and handwriting vintage ads. Welcome, Dorothy. And lastly, for today's discussion, we have Shami. She serves as the Chief Impact Officer for Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator based in South Africa. Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator develops African solutions for the global challenge of youth unemployment. Previously, she served as Vice President of Lifelong Engagement at African Leadership Academy, where she oversaw a network of 2,000 young African leaders, managed ALA's alumni engagement team. Shami is an Aspen African Leadership Initiative Fellow, class of 2020, and sits on the boards of Emerging Public Leaders, Metis, and Instill Education. Shami holds a BA from Harvard University, a master's degree from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and a master's degree from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. Welcome, Shami, and welcome to all our panelists for today. We are very excited to have you all join us in today's discussion. Now, to get us started with the topic of the day, I'm going to ask all our panelists to answer the first question. What are your views on the future of work in Africa currently? And I can take on Matt to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you. And good to be here. And it's great to see so many people joining. Yeah, so let me zoom way out to start with. Let's answer the question of where are the jobs in Africa currently, and potentially where might they go? So if you look at kind of traditional development theory, typically economies will go from agriculture, move from agriculture into manufacturing, and from manufacturing into services. That's what we've seen India do, that's what we've seen China do. And that's kind of been the script for developing. So where are we right now in Africa? Well, we have about just over 50% of our jobs or people that are working are in agriculture. That's a number that's been going down over the last 20 years, but not quickly, but slightly down. We also have about 40% that are in services, and that number has actually been going up quite quickly. And then manufacturing, where we would think that we would see more people going into manufacturing, it's actually been pretty much stagnant for the last 20 years. A little bit of a rise, but not much. So I think that we expect to see that. So see that continue going forward. So, but what that means is, number one, we're still gonna have a lot of people in agriculture. I don't think that that's something that's going away. Number two, I think there's a question about whether Africa goes into manufacturing like other countries or continents or regions have done, because we see more people onshoring since the continent, more people bringing their manufacturing closer to home. Since the pandemic, and we also see a lot more automation that's happening. So there's a question of whether we actually need as many more jobs in manufacturing. So that leaves services, and this kind of gets to my first hypothesis, which is I don't know that Africa goes through manufacturing as other continents or regions have done. I think that perhaps what happens is exporting digital talent becomes that thing that replaces manufacturing, or at least supplements manufacturing going forward. So I think we'll see a lot of jobs. We'll continue to see a lot of jobs in agriculture. We'll see jobs in digital and exporting digital talent. And I think those will be two big things going forward. The one other thing that I'll say is that yes, I think AI is going to disrupt a lot of things. I think it's going to touch a lot of different industries, and I'm sure that we'll get into that more. But I'll just put that aside, and we'll probably come back to it. But I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much, Matt. I know for sure AI is the current topic of discussion, but I'm happy that you pointed out the different industries that are likely to continue growing over time. Let's hear from Dorothy. What are your views on the future of work on continent?
Thank you so much, Angela, and I'm really super excited to be part of this conversation. Honestly, for me, as a freelancer that's based in Africa, I am honestly privileged to be part and honestly witness the evolving landscape of work, especially here in the region. So when you're looking at it right now, we actually have access to the internet, and we are, there's a rise in digital platforms. And that in itself shows us that, the world is changing in how work has actually evolved. So more than ever, there is a huge opportunity for young people on the continent, to leapfrog the traditional models of work and tap into the global market. And I can say this based on what happened in the pandemic. So the pandemic, honestly, it kind of sped up the way more businesses moved online, and it made remote work something that many businesses could take on. So they realized, I can actually get talent from any part of the world. And so right now, I feel like it's very, very easy for anyone to move online, especially all you need is your laptop and an internet connection, and you can tap into, the widened pool of work that's available online. And when you look at it also from the perspective of what happened in the pandemic, so many businesses literally moved online, and they started tapping into the talent, the global talent. So for me, my perspective on the future of work is, it is honestly providing immense opportunities for young people. And more than ever, anyone now can collaborate and, find clients and offer their services online. Yeah, it's honestly providing immense opportunities for anyone here on the continent. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Dorothy. I know it brings me so much joy and comfort knowing that our boundaries of the kinds of opportunities we have access to as young people on continent, they've just broadened with the internet. And so putting ourselves out there and tapping into these opportunities as young people is critical in enjoying the benefits that come with remote work, digital economy. So nice to hear that you're already doing that. Shami, let's hear from you. You're working with young people. How is that from your end?
Thank you, Angela. Firstly, hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be on this call. As you may have seen from Angela's readout of my bio, I'm very close to the Mastercard Scholars Programs. Wonderful to see you all connecting from all of the parts of the continent and the world. Welcome. And thank you, Matt and Dorothy, for the great comments. I'm going to talk about a couple of things, maybe sort of three big trends that I've seen in terms of both my work at ALA with the Mastercard Scholars Program, as well as Harambee and young people that we serve in South Africa and in Rwanda. So firstly, I'm going to paraphrase one of a science fiction writer, William Gibson, who says he said that the future is already here, it's not evenly distributed. I'm going to paraphrase that to say the future of work is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. And I would say that's definitely true of Africa and Africa vis-a-vis the rest of the world. So I think there's going to be different paces of change in terms of the future of work. And that's kind of something that's quite important. We see that both intra-Africa, so between countries, Matt was describing sectors and countries and continents, et cetera, and where we, could trend, but also between cities within a country. So I think you could have a very different future of work for Johannesburg versus a rural area in South Africa. So that's just one point in terms of it's not evenly distributed. So I think we need to think that, keep that in mind and hold that constant. The second thing for me, I think it can be, there's sort of three sort of sub-trends that I want to talk about, because it can be a huge advantage, but we have to take into consideration some really important trends. Firstly, I don't think a job of today will look like a job of tomorrow. And it definitely doesn't mean a job of 40 years ago, which most of our education and skilling institutions have been designed around, is not going to be the job of tomorrow. So most jobs of 40, 50 years ago were sort of steady, secure jobs and served a tiny minority of people, really. And education institutions and skilling institutions were designed for that reality, for a very linear pathway that you go to school, you get a degree, you get a middle-class job, and you get into job security and stay there until you get your sort of gold watch for retirement. That's definitely not true of the day of today, definitely not true in Africa, and definitely not across the world. And so for me, a job is not a job, and a job is not the job for the future, and linear pathways and institutions need to change according to that reality. The last point I want to make for me, and this is really central to the work that we think about at Harambee, and I'm really excited to hear both Dorothy and Matt talk about it. But I think while this is exciting in terms of the digital jobs of the future, you mentioned freelance, Dorothy, and a number of things that we are doing on the continent. If we don't prioritize inclusion at the heart of whatever that is, whether it's inclusive growth, inclusive access and distribution, or inclusive or a real addressing of job security and sustainability, and from that lens of inclusion, then this advantage in terms of technology and growth, et cetera, can really turn into a disadvantage. So I think for me, especially at Harambee, we really believe that inclusion is really important to prioritize. I mean, we talk about AI, we talk about job losses, we talk about ChatGPT taking away jobs. I'm an incurable optimist, but I do believe that prioritizing inclusion in these conversations, so inclusive AI, inclusive technology, inclusive growth, is the way forward for us to take advantage. So those are sort of my three big trends that I wanted to focus on, and obviously we'll comment on the detail in terms of sectors and job growth, et cetera, and opportunities that we could zone in on. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you so much, Shami. Great points there around trends. I can bet that whatever jobs people had 20 years ago, they are probably not very much relevant present day. And people continue to upskill and stay relevant within the operations, within businesses that they work. And you mentioned something very important, inclusivity and sustainability. I don't know where the future of work is gonna, take into consideration things around inclusivity, but they are definitely important things to consider. Now, my next question is going to be thrown to Matthew. Now that work and processes are getting digitized, you mentioned AI, and work and processes are getting digitized and automated, what are some of the skills that remain constant that young Africans need to learn to be successful, even in the midst of these changes?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Good question. I know that's a question that's on a lot of people's minds. To be direct about it, I mean soft skills. But let me talk about why. So the way I see it, and a lot of us now have exposure to AI through ChatGPT. But really, what AI is doing for us is it is kind of it's doing two things. Number one, it's giving us new insights. It's kind of mining data, giving us insights that we haven't had in the past. The other thing that it's doing is it's doing a lot of the grunt work for us. So it's helping us do the writing. If you're a coder, it's helping you with the syntax, so that you kind of doing that. But then there's still a lot of a room for what the human needs to do, right? So I have new insights. I have new documents. But what do I do with those insights? What do I do with those documents? And really, the person that's going to be more successful is someone who's going to be able to take that and navigate in uncertain scenarios, right? We're in a world where things are moving quickly. We're in a world where the skills that you had before may not be relevant in the future, but you might need to figure out, what skills should I learn next? What is going to be most relevant for me? And so to be able to navigate that uncertain future, the other thing that I want to also insert in here, it's still about 50%, more than 50% of people on the continent are working in the informal sector. And what I say about that, the reason that I think that that's important is because that's also a very uncertain space. And this goes to Sharmi's point. In terms of the way that jobs are looking, it's going to be a lot less like I work for this one company for 20 years. It's going to be, we use a term called a portfolio of incomes, and that could be both in the informal sector. I sell some goods here, I do some piecework here, I lend some money out and get a little bit of interest on that. I'm cobbling together a portfolio of incomes. But even in the formal sector, Dorothy talked about this. I'm a freelancer. I do this for this company. I have a small contract. I'm on a retainer for another company, and I'm kind of juggling around multiple pieces of income. What that means is, people are really going to have to be able to navigate these uncertain scenarios. They might not know exactly what tomorrow's going to look like. They might not know what a year from now is going to look like. So can I take this stuff from, to first of all, navigate my career, figure out what types of skills I need? That's number one. Number two, when I'm in a job, I'm getting these insights from AI. I need to now go out and convince people, that this is the path that they should take. I need to work on myself. I need to make sure that I have grit. I need to have that kind of cognitive ability of like problem solving, even when information is not 100%. And so those are the soft skills, and we talk about them in 3 areas I kind of mentioned. But like number one is like cognitive abilities, problem solving. Number two is self-management. Can I manage myself, my emotions? Can I give myself that drive? Number three is working with others and managing others. So those are like the three kind of areas of soft skills. And then digital, am I exposed to that digital? And it's not like, do I know how to specifically code in Python, but do I understand kind of the logic of code? Do I understand how to jump into something and work with digital systems? So those are the four skills that I would say are really important. And then the way I see about it, hard skills are important, but they change so quickly. So you're going to jump into something, learn it quickly. It might be good for a year, it might be good for 2 years, and then you're going to have to figure out what is that next hard skill that I want to learn. So that's kind of how I see it.
Right. What I'm hearing from you is that we need not relax or get lazy at all, because in the midst of all these technologies coming up, we have to stay alert and continuously find ways to improve ourselves, especially in the soft skills arena, where some of these things are actually not taught in school. So we have to teach ourselves and equip ourselves with all these different soft skills as young people to help us beat technology and be better or be relevant in our different positions that we hold in different companies. Good points, Matt. So my next question goes to Shami. What are your thoughts on the current trends of technology? We are talking about digital and technology. The gig economy is a popular word now that is being shared everywhere, and it's offering opportunities to African youth. What are your thoughts on these current trends? And in as much as it's bringing value, is it making the African continent lose more of its human capital by creating virtual immigration? A term there that I would like some expansion on.
Great question. I'm going to answer it in a couple of different parts. I often use the phrase from an employer partner of ours at Harambee in Rwanda, who runs something called Tech Experts, which is virtual outsourcing for tech solutions in Rwanda, and employs several hundreds of young Rwandans, Gary Bennett. And he says, in the US, we have the Great Resignation, and in the rest of the world, particularly in Africa, we have the Great Application. And in some ways, and Matt alluded to it in the beginning when he was saying, digital is a solution. Digital is a big frame in terms of what we can call some of these gig jobs. Some of it is global business services, contact centers, et cetera. There's data analysts and other kinds of jobs. So I'm going to answer the question in two parts. One is digitization of jobs and offshoring of some of these jobs and getting some access to the rest of the world. But I'll first start with gig work in general. And I think our experience at Harambee in particular suggests that, and Matt alluded to, the fact that the informal economy is a big absorber of young people across the continent. But it's still very precarious. It's still very low income and very volatile. And so again, going back to my point around inclusion, I think for me, gig work in general can be a great thing, but it has to be secure, it has to be stable, it has to be sustainable, it has to be resilient. And that's not just on the young person, right? I mean, Matt described all of these skills, which are great, but even if you had all of those skills, if you didn't have a labor environment that was supportive and sustaining income, you're just going to have to be, juggling from gig to gig. You have people who have college degrees who are moonlighting as Uber drivers to try to make ends meet. So it has to be, and you can still do that, but it has to be this portfolio of income that Matt described has to suit your needs, but in a sustainable, secure, dignified way that allows you to gain, resilient income. So that's just one piece around gig work in general. Then you ask the question around offshoring of human capital. I mean, our experience both in South Africa and in Rwanda, where Harambee really has partnered to create industries and ecosystems around work that can be done in these countries, but for clients anywhere. And a couple of things, again, is firstly, the demand is growing. We actually can't stop the demand. I mean, some of the trends that Matt was describing, we have people coming from across the world saying we want to hire people, they 24/7 call center work or tech support, etc. And the skills that Matt describes are definitely true in spades in Africa. People have empathy, they have problem solving, they have communication skills, maybe with a little bit of boost here and there. And we have that in spades. So I think the demand is there, the young people exist. It's about figuring out how to tap into that. But what Harambee has done both in South Africa and in Rwanda is build not just, job matching platforms, which again can be a race to the bottom and put the young person actually at the back end of the conversation. It has to be about building the ecosystem. And how do we do that? We have to bring everyone to the table. We have to bring government to the table. We have to bring private sector to the table. We have to bring civil society to the table. And each has a unique lens. Government brings regulation, frameworks, etc. Private sector brings speed, efficiency, scale, innovation, and us, social enterprises, bring a lens on inclusion and a focus on young people and sustainability. So I think if you bring many people to the table, you can take advantage of these big trends in terms of global offshoring of talent. And then the last thing is, I think we are in a globally connected world, Angela. I mean, you said, virtual brain drain, etc. I think there's going to be as much as we give to others that we gain in terms of, jobs, security, skills, etc. I remember meeting a young contact center worker at Tech Experts in Rwanda maybe a couple of months ago, and she said it gave her such joy resolving. She was working on a customer service for JetBlue, which is an airline, and some of you may know it, but she was resolving an elderly couple's tech issues in Canada. She'd never met them, never talked to them, but she met them for the first time. And she said it gave her such joy to go systematically through the problem and resolve this elderly couple's issues. To be very honest, that's so satisfying. And this young person has a job as a result of that. And I think there's meaningful exchange when you bring the guardrails of what I described to bear to this kind of work. We can take advantage of this huge boom in demand in these kinds of skills and jobs. So anyway, those are my perspectives, but I'm sure Dorothy, being in the front seat of this, can probably share more light as well.
Certainly, we're going to hear from her, but just great points you've hinted on there. One for me is involving all stakeholders in ensuring that young people partake in the opportunities. And personally, I'm not mad at virtual immigration. It can be brain drain, it can be whatever, but it's like you said, it's just satisfying to be in your home and get a job in the US. Dorothy is working for companies that are not locally based in Uganda. And previously, it would not be possible. So the fact that there are open doors for people to get those jobs that would otherwise not be possible in the past, I'm happy with that. We can roll with that virtual immigration 100%. But Dorothy, to you, being a freelancer and an active participant in this space, as a youth out there with many other people doing almost the same thing as you are, and even better than you supposedly, how do you position yourself to be competitive and stay competitive in the job market?
Thank you so much, Angela. For me, this is a very, it's a question that I always get, like, why do those clients work with you? So I'm currently working with two big agencies, one in the US and another one in Germany. And it's super interesting when someone tells me, oh, why did they actually choose you? Now, for me, so I'll start from the place of, I'm currently working in the marketing space, and marketing is honestly always and constantly evolving. And the thing that has enabled me honestly position myself in the positions I am taking up right now as a copywriter is being able to continuously learn and improve my skill set. So just to give you an idea of how I honestly started, I started as a freelance health and wellness writer. And that's because I had done a degree in nutrition. And so I spent a lot of my time on a freelancing platform, and I realized, oh, there were so many businesses that were actually looking for health and wellness writers. But over time, I noticed that, oh no, Dorothy, business is actually not looking for health and wellness writers. So many businesses are looking for the kind of writing that impacts them and drives revenue to their businesses. And so because I spent so much time on the marketplace, I realized, oh, business was actually looking for copywriters. And so I immediately transitioned into copywriting. And so how did I actually position myself for this copywriting? So copywriting, for example, is a very big and vast industry. There is not just one kind of copywriting. There is website copywriting, there is email copywriting, and there's so many other like landing pages, everything that a business would need to position itself online. But then I figured out that no, businesses are not really looking for how many businesses every day put up websites and keep updating them. The number is very small. But for example, when you look at businesses in the US, they are constantly sending out emails to their customers. And I figured out that this is an industry I could jump into and provide my writing to these businesses because it was an in-demand skill. And so I narrowed down to not just writing every kind of copy, but I narrowed down to email copywriting because I knew that businesses were looking for this service. And so the most important thing to really position yourself as a freelancer offering your services is to position yourself as an expert. As an email copywriter, I know if a business is looking for someone to write their emails, they're more likely to hire someone who is an email copywriter. And that way I'm able to position myself as an expert. Also, the other aspect I really look at the angle of niching down and narrowing down to the skills you offer on the market. You really want to position yourself as an expert because it gives you a competitive edge. And clients, you actually attract the kind of clients that are looking for your specific skill set. So that's one way I was able to position myself in a competitive industry. I know there are so many copywriters who are really good, but because I really narrowed down to an in-demand skill that businesses were looking for, I am able to honestly keep finding work with this skill set of mine. So the other question about staying competitive in the job market, honestly, I have realized, and this is something I've come to, I honestly didn't realize how the market was always evolving, but looking back at how much I have shifted from the things I did when I started out as a freelancer, I noticed that the market is honestly always changing, and it's important to stay on top of your game. And the good thing is there's so many places where you can learn your skills. There are online courses, tutorials. Every place literally online is a place for you to learn. Online community is a space for you to learn. And also on the aspect of staying competitive, I currently am now moving away from writing because honestly, when you look at it, ChatGPT can do writing. Why would a client hire you if ChatGPT can actually do the writing? And so slowly by slowly, I'm walking away from just writing emails and offering a range of services, a competitive range of services to my clients. So right now, I know that if a client is to take me on as a copywriter, he would need to hire a designer. He would need to hire someone to manage the software that sends out the emails. And so I'm moving to the place of offering 360-degree email marketing to these clients. That way I am more valuable to them and I am able to actually, find dignified work, and my clients pay a premium price because I'm not just offering them one service, but I'm saving them from taking on a lot of other people who would do these small jobs, and I can do it for them. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm getting excited by the conversation, and I can see how we are having connections between what every panelist is sharing. Matt earlier shared that we need to stay relevant by upskilling and building our soft skills, know what's out there and build that. And that's exactly what you're doing, Dorothy. It started out as, I can do this, but then you notice that there's more that clients are looking for, and you build the skill to actually do the work that the clients are looking for. And there's again another shift with the introduction of AI that you have to learn and see how else can I be relevant to the clients that I work for. So great comments, great points. I'm loving the conversation. So my next question goes to Matthew, still around technology and back to the point of Shami around inclusion. we are talking about the future of work, employing technology in our work, but how does the future of digital safety and inclusion look like under this lens?
Thanks. And yeah, I just want to echo, I mean, I think Dorothy's story is so great and it illustrates so many of the points. And just, yeah, amazed at, how she's been able to put this together. I mean, we theorized about it and she's like doing it on the ground, shifting from one thing to another, staying relevant. I think it's great. Yeah, in terms of inclusion, I think Sharma said she's an incurable optimist. I put myself in the same category. I like that phrase. I hadn't heard that before. I'm a huge optimist. So let's talk about inclusion. You said inclusion and safety. Inclusion, I'm very optimistic, especially when it comes to things like disability inclusion. I think that there's so many things that AI and new technology is going to do in terms of just giving people those opportunities. We had a chance to speak to a woman here in Kenya who is working with the Ajira program, who is disabled, and because of the Ajira program and online freelancing, she's now able to make a living for herself using technology, which is able to overcome the disabilities that she has. So from that aspect, I'm very optimistic. When we talk about inclusion, the other thing to think about is geographic inclusion. And that's an interesting one. And I'm actually be very interested to hear Dorothy's take on this. But I've talked to a lot of freelancers who say, listen, if I put up on my profile that I'm from Kenya or that I'm from Ghana, or heaven forbid that I'm from Nigeria, like I will not get any people coming to me. I need, so they put in fake profile pictures and they're like from Eastern Europe or the US or something like that in order to be able to get those jobs. So that's something that, is more of like a branding issue that hopefully over time, the continent will be able to overcome. But I am curious in the short term, how people are overcoming that. But again, I'm optimistic that we will, just kind of as we use the talent and improve ourselves. In terms of protection, I think that happens at a lot of different angles, kind of like three, like technology, social, and policy. In terms of technology, I think that just more and more there are going to be safeguardings that are built into these systems. We already have freelancing platforms that are helping to facilitate payments so that hopefully you don't have this issue of payments, though still it is an issue sometimes. But technical solutions that are safeguarding people. So that's one. Number two, though, is it's just a social one. It's just about people learning to navigate the online space. And as you get more and more involved, sometimes you learn the hard way. But people learn, and oftentimes from the networks that you make, being able to tap somebody who's a little bit more experienced from you and say, hey, does this sound right? This sounds a little off to me. Is this right? I think that's such a powerful thing. I have been involved in like the Web3 and crypto space, and they say like if you haven't been scammed in crypto, then you haven't really earned your badge yet. Like, you get scammed, you earn your badge, you move on. It's not fun, but you do learn from that. And then the last one is policy, and that there is space for governments to get involved, especially as there was hearings yesterday in the U.S. Congress about new legislation for AI, and I think that is probably something that's going to have to happen, and we're going to have these conversations. But yeah, I those are the three areas that I think people can look at in terms of safety.
Nice. Increasingly, I am learning that data protection is important as we move forward into the digital era, because there are so many scammers that are also not sleeping. They're finding ways to hack into different accounts and snatch money and whatever. So increasingly, we have to be mindful as we partake in these opportunities, be aware that there are people out there who are also taking advantage of this and using it in the worst way possible. So Shami, the next question goes to you. The future of work is remote, but there's a worry about productivity. Already it's a problem as people they are, surfing on the internet as their workplaces, even in the office, how much more remotely. So strengthening company culture is one way to retain productivity. How do you suggest African-based startups do this?
Great question, Angela. And who hasn't surfed on the internet, right? And who hasn't been, trying to address the issues of productivity? I'll just talk about a couple of things. Firstly, I think COVID taught us a bit of a lesson which we ought to continue learning. I think in the pandemic, there were a couple of things that were made clear. One is you can work remotely and still be productive, but on the flip side, it can have its downsides in terms of both engagement and outcomes, and in-person can never substitute for the online engagement. So things that I want to focus on perhaps is that there are really important ways you can, and I'll draw on Harambee's own experience. In COVID, we instantly went remote like everyone. We have a network of about 400 contact center staff in South Africa, about 15 in Rwanda. And then we used a combination of high tech and low tech to connect people to our culture. And I'll talk about the low tech first. We started a radio show. It was an everyday radio show. And the jingle at the beginning, the Baobab platform's jingle, made me think of our radio show, because we've sustained that even in this time now, because it was a really interesting, useful, low-tech way for us to communicate and engage with our people. We would give safety tips about COVID, information about lockdowns and regulation, but we would also talk about our dashboard and our outcomes. And then it became something that the young people took on and made their own. We now have DJs. They make it really super fun. It's twice a week. And we have a quiz show about, both jargon, but also about our outcomes. So the reason I'm bringing that up is you can use a variety of tools, and this is a low-tech tool. It's a radio. I mean, there's a Zoom call with audio only, and it is a really exciting way to engage people, to be a part of a culture and be connected, even though you are millions of miles away. And so I think creating connection through a combination of high and low tech it's important, because you need to belong to a community, because you don't just work for an organization. It's not just transactions. So I think emphasizing community through high and low tech is really critical. The second thing I want to talk about is, I think as we've gone remote, I think flexibility, both of time and place, is important, because we know that it's not just hybrid of time, it's hybrid of place and hybrid of ways of engaging. But again, I'm going to talk about inclusion, and I'm going to talk specifically about women, because I think in some specific instances, gender is a huge factor, right? So flexibility is great, particularly for women, if you can prioritize and set the guardrails. As myself, as a working mother, etc., during COVID, I really appreciated that, it became normalized that my kids would appear in the Zoom call, or I had to stop and take my kids, and prioritize homework, etc. That's normalized. Please, let's continue that. But let's also not downplay the fact that we can also, put a lot of the burden on setting the guardrails on the employee versus the employer. There's no expectation, just because I'm flexible and work late hours, that you should respond. Let's normalize that. Let's set these norms that are both flexible but inclusive, particularly of gender norms, particularly of childcare and family and community duties. And so let's be clear about that and explicit. And I think organizations can do a really good job of doing that in a way that can actually, increase productivity engagement. And then the last thing to emphasize, outcomes. I mean, you're not here to work alone. You're here to get things done. And so FaceTime, just FaceTime, I mean, not the Apple FaceTime. I'm talking about physical FaceTime in terms of being present for the sake of being present, is no longer valuable. So it's not about how many hours you put in, but how much you get done. So if you do take 4 hours for something that would have normally taken a day, but you go off and then do your pottery class instead, but because you're just an efficient person, why should you be penalized, right? So I think for me, let's reconceptualize what we mean by work and how we engage people with culture, with high and low tech, with flexibility that prioritizes women and care and other kinds of duties. But importantly, let's focus on outcomes, because at the end of the day, we're not here to be present for the work hours, but do the job that needs to get done. So those are some tools. And yeah, there's some exciting things that are out there. I'm sure other companies are doing some exciting things as well.
Right. You touched on very, very important things. If there's anything that the pandemic taught us and companies out there, is to be creative when it comes to engaging its employees. That was a time that I engaged so much in trivia games and DJing. You mentioned DJing. That was very nice. I must admit, having fun virtually seemed impossible, but then it happened during those times. And the point about inclusion, women specifically, I feel like there's so much you get done working remotely, both personally and professionally. And if the focus is put on output rather than how much time you sit behind the machine, I'm sure so many employees specifically would be happy, but also employers would see that it doesn't matter how much time the person spends behind the laptop, as long as they can get their deliverables done. I wish more and more companies adopt such mindsets, because I've worked for companies traditionally here and they still appreciate the 9 to 5 login in the office, be called in the wee hours and be expected to respond, but people are not actually doing the work. So I love that you really touched on those critical points. So lastly, for our conversations with the panelists is a question that is going to Dorothy. How have you managed to build a successful career? I know you've probably touched on this, but we'll delve deeper into it specifically. How have you managed to build a successful career in the digital economy? And what's your advice to young people about how they can get started? I'm sure we have lots of young voices here today. So what do you have to tell them?
Nice. So I'll start with Matt's question, how he said so many young people are actually afraid to say where they come from because they're afraid that their clients wouldn't hire them. Just to mention, I currently work with a German agency, and I work with a list of German brands. I don't speak German, so I write my copy in English, and then my client is actually okay with hiring a German translator who always translates the copy into German. The reason he does that is not because he can't find someone who speaks German to write the copy. It's because he knows I can do the emails that will drive revenue for these brands, and so he's willing to hire me. Over the years, I've learned that clients really don't care where you come from. As long as you can get the work done, they will hire you. It's about giving them what they're looking for. And I'm not sure if this is really like from a very, my perspective honestly has changed so much, because brands hiring a freelancer is much cheaper than for them hiring someone to sit in the office. That means they are not incurring insurance expenses, rent, and all that stuff that you pay to your permanent employees. So they are willing to pay you to get this work done. And it costs them way less to hire you as a freelancer. And for people who always tell me, oh, wouldn't these clients really like pay you way less than a US, if they hired someone from the US? And I'll tell them the thing that speaks for you is not where you come from, it's your portfolio. If you have a strong portfolio, clients would respect you and how much you charge. It's not how much clients pay you is not about where you come from, it's about the service you're giving them. Then to answer the question of how I've actually built a successful freelance career, honestly, for me, it's a place of, it has been very challenging, but as well rewarding, because I have learned so much, and I can do so much than if I was working for a company here. And the thing that has contributed to much of my success is the willingness and commitment to continuous learning. I did a degree in nutrition, and right now what I do is way far from what I did in school. I've honestly never pulled out my transcript. I've never shown anyone my university degree. And my clients don't even care what I studied. All they care about is, can Dorothy get this done? And getting the job done is going to require you to learn so much. You have to put in the time to learn, always be updated about the latest trends, the latest tools. I am a copywriter right now, and I honestly, I write about 100 emails a week. Before I knew ChatGPT, I would spend literally over 80 hours writing. And now with ChatGPT, I spend less than 10 hours writing my emails, and they're always done. So for me, it's a tool that is helping me get my work done on time and deliver it quickly. Plus now I know that I can find more clients because I have a tool that is helping me. My perspective with ChatGPT is honestly changing. And it's because I feel like clients are now aware that, oh, you know what? I can't pay you this amount of money because I know you will use ChatGPT. So they'll tell you, how about this rate? The fact that I can get this email done, I'm always able to negotiate with our clients and tell them, oh, I can actually get your email done faster and easier. You honestly don't have to tell them you're using ChatGPT. I'm not sure if they know, but they really don't care. All they want to do is get to know that you're doing the work. And for me, find that even though people say, oh, ChatGPT is going to take your job as a copywriter, at the end of the day, most clients don't have the time to enter the prompts in ChatGPT, right? They don't have the time to get ChatGPT write for them an email. So at the end of the day, they're hiring you because you know how to use ChatGPT to instruct it to create the copy that you need. And this has led me to the next thing that I would say. Freelancing requires you to be a very flexible person and also adapt to the latest tools, adapt to the latest technologies, and use them to progress your career. Because I know that as a writer, my clients might need me as a writer. And I say this earlier on, but they need me to do more than just writing. If they're going to hire me and if I'm going to earn more or find more work, I need to offer more to my clients. And it has honestly taken me less than, I've built the kind of skills I've learned right now. It has taken me less than a month. Because right now I am learning how to program a software that's called, it's not really programming, but running and using it. It's called Klaviyo. So Klaviyo is right now the latest email marketing software for e-commerce brands. And I have learned how to use it to design the emails and to schedule them, to set up flows so that my clients' revenue is automated. Even if they are sleeping, they're earning money from their email marketing software. I have learned to make sure that my clients' emails are honestly sent out in time. So all of these skill sets, it's just a place of learning. And once you learn, you become more relevant in a marketplace. And the more relevant you are, the more clients you're going to find. It's really not about where you come from, but it's the skill set that you bring on the table. And my client, honestly, my German client recently told me this. And it's like, Dorothy, I don't want you to come to this agency and work for me as a Black woman because the numbers you're driving for our clients don't lie. And I want you to come here as Black excellence because you're doing way more than all the other people I've hired, and you're driving way more revenue than anyone I've hired on this team. So your numbers will always speak for you. And that's the thing that always matters most. Can you drive results? Can you bring the numbers that clients are looking for? So it's always very important for you to be flexible, to change your skill set, adapt to the latest software, and learn. Freelancing is it's honestly very dynamic, and one skill won't sustain you the next day. What brought you a client today may not bring you another client the next day. So it's important for you to keep learning. I think it's the most important thing for you to be a successful freelancer. Learn and keep learning and continuously learn. And so my other question is, the advice I would say to young people, especially here on the continent, honestly, just be bold and go for it. It's amazing how many people would be proud to actually have you on the team, and they would actually pay you for what you're bringing on the team. You're not going to know it all if you just take courses. But the most important thing is to really work with clients. You will learn a lot on the job, especially when it comes to like marketing softwares. You never know it all. Every day there's literally a new tool that can do something. And as long as you can quickly learn how to use it, you will always be ahead of the competition. So it's important for you to put yourself out there and learn. And don't be afraid to find the clients because they honestly don't care where you're coming from. They care that you're bringing valuable skills to the table.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for raising the Black Excellence banner out there. We are rooting for you and clapping hands for you. So that's really nice to hear. And secondly, students who are on this call, finish your academics because it's important, regardless of whether you don't use it after graduation. It's important to have that certificate. And thirdly, I'm happy that you've shared that in this space, you have to continuously learn, which is something that cuts across all kinds of industries. If you're not learning on a daily basis, you're going to be stagnant, you're going to be irrelevant, you're going to be kicked out of whatever you're doing. So learn, continuously learn. And speaking about learning, there's a course on Baobab that speaks to digital freelancing. And Dorothy, for one, is the mouthpiece for that course. So if you can, please do get a chance to check it out on Baobab. It's free. And it has a lot of resources for you to get started, just in case you're wondering where to start from. Now, that marks the end of our interview. Thank you so much to our guest panelists. This was great. This was very informative. And now we'll turn to questions from our attendees. But before we do that, we're going to run a poll. Baobab is working on a space to continue this conversation. Actually, the space is already created. Please fill out the poll to help us design future of work activities, chat groups, and events. We have a chat channel specifically created for further conversations on the future of work, and the link is shared in chat right now as I speak while the poll is running. So help us fill out this poll. It's going to guide our conversations in the future around this particular discussion, which is future of work on continent. So I'll give us a minute to fill that out. But as that is running, if you have any questions for our panelists, for Matt, for Dorothy, for Shami, please go ahead and share them in the Q&A function or in chat. I'll read out to our panelists and they'll answer them. I see we have some questions, so we can probably get started once the poll stops running. Ooh. I see the numbers coming in. Please, if you have a chance, do fill this poll, do participate in this poll to help us plan future conversations around the future of work. We have hands raised. I'm guessing those are conversations for the guests of the day, but I'm going to get started in the interest of time. The first question is from Samuel. Oops. Okay. All right. So the first question goes to Dorothy. This person, Samuel, would like to know some of the challenges you faced as a freelancer and ways you've overcome them. We're going to briefly run through these because we are running out of time. So Dorothy, that goes out to you.
For me, honestly, one of the challenges I've had is payment. And I think this is like generally, I had a conversation today with Angela because we had a meeting earlier on. And I was telling her how it is so hard. Initially, it was so hard to actually find a payment gateway where clients could actually pay you. And that's because so many of the platforms that clients really prefer are not available for me here. And if there's no way to actually get paid, then there's no way you can work for someone. But so that I've seen that this has really changed a lot because nowadays there's so many payment platforms that allow you in a blink of an eye to have an EU bank account, a blink of an eye to have an American bank account, or literally any country you want to have. And that's transfer wise. So for me, that's not a problem anymore. But initially it was a very big problem because I could not have access to payment methods for my clients. Another thing, it's like how Matt said, some clients will not want to work with you because you come from Africa. I've had an instance where one of the clients told my client, one of the brands I was working with, and the client, because when you are on, no, not really trailer, what is it? I'm forgetting the co-working space that we use, but the client noticed that on I had put my name plus my country, and I put Uganda. So the client reached out to the agency owner and was like, oh, I've noticed the person who's going to work on my emails is actually from Uganda. I'm not comfortable with an African working on my brand because I don't want to get low quality work. And so my client was like, oh no, Dorothy has been working with us for so long, and I trust that she will do well. So the client literally put me on a test, and he told me to do the first samples of the emails, and if he likes them, he would allow me to. And so how I'm actually addressing that for the clients who are skeptical with hiring freelancers from Africa is always tell them, I'll do this for you, but at a lower rate. Just for that, I'll do a test for you at a lower rate. And it's always amazing how much clients would pay you when they realize that they're not getting subpar work, but they're actually getting quality work. I think for me, those have been the main two problems. Clients really think you're not qualified to work on their brands, and then finding a gateway problem. But it's all, you must learn to think of how to really address all these problems, because it's always easier. You can always find a solution to these problems.
Wow, nice. Thank you for that, Dorothy. The next question, I'm just going to do a marathon of questions that are coming in the interest of time. So the next question is a comment that spoke to what Matt shared. I'm going to read it out. Mr. Matthew Grollnek started off by making reference to a certain theory, but the person did not hear it very well. If I can guess, I would say it is more like development theory. Can you kindly restate it? And when it comes to the role schools play in ensuring development in Africa, can one conclude that they, that is the schools, are one of the main reasons why most African students remain ignorant about this evolution in technology?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, it is basically development theory. And the theory is that for a country to go from kind of undeveloped or underdeveloped to a developed country, typically or historically, it's gone from agriculture, moving people from agriculture into manufacturing, which typically employs a lot of people, and it's kind of a medium level of income, to services, which is typically more of a higher paying type of role. So that was the theory. And then what I was positing was that perhaps Africa will take a different route, but perhaps not. Now, in terms of that theory, education isn't specifically part of that theory, but your question was around, are schools the reason that people are not maybe keeping up with technology or maybe with the skills of the workplace? And I mean, I think each country is a little bit different. Kenya, for example, has gone through a new kind of skills-based curriculum or competency-based curriculum, although they are still in some ways struggling to implement it because the teachers don't necessarily aren't fully on board and aren't fully trained on how to do that. But it's country by country. But if we back out like even more broadly, I would say if you look across the entire world, most education systems, in my opinion, are kind of behind and playing catch up. This kind of typical version of education where a teacher stands in front of a classroom, talks to a bunch of students, everybody goes at the same pace at the same time and learns the same thing. That's really something that was invented about 200 years ago. And really one of the reasons that it was created was to prepare people to work in factories. We're now in a different world, and we have much more complex world and different ways and different skills that people need. So yeah, I think generally there's a huge need for reform across the world. They say that education is one of the few industries that hasn't been disrupted in 100 years. So yes, I think that's needed. And yeah, hopefully it's something we can all work on.
Thank you for that answer. So the next questions are going to go to Sharma. One of them is asking about concentration while working from home. How can people be better productive to avoid distractions while working from home? And the second one is, how do people prepare themselves to align well with the future of work?
Thanks. I'm going to try and answer the concentration question, although I think it plagues all of us. But let me answer the second one first in terms of aligning for the future of work. I think Matt covered some of it and Dorothy really nailed it in terms of adaptability, right? So I think keeping your ability to have a core of competence and skills in what you do, whether it's copy editing, whether it's software, etc., but being adaptable. So, using ChatGPT to your advantage, like reducing hours, like Dorothy said she did. So I think understanding what your core value add is and understanding where you need to adapt. There's some great, research that's being done. People talk about job losses with the future of work, but what really is underestimated is job change. So it's not like we are going to lose jobs, but we are going to drastically change jobs. And so change is the only constant in terms of the future of work. So learning agility, understanding how to adapt your core skills, thinking constantly of how do you iterate, spotting trends, thinking of, okay, what is your space that you play in? Read up about it, look at, read internet articles, etc. Be informed and stay on top of what you need to do to actually tweak and iterate your skills. And then in terms of concentration, the thing that I do, and this is more personal than really anything, I tend to work in bursts. There's so much distraction on the internet. And I think, we've had a lot of rigor applied to nutrition in terms of what we pay attention to, what goes into our bodies. What we don't do as well is pay a lot of rigor and have a focus on what goes into our mind and have a focus in terms of attention span and focused concentration. So I think self-awareness is key, understanding how you learn and how you work, but really also paying attention to what you consume and being moderate about how you consume that, I think is really important. I think digital detoxes are real because we spend so much time online. Taking walks in nature as much as you're able or connecting with people in real time is actually as valuable to inspire concentration and productivity, because we live in such a digitally constantly plugged in world that actually unplugging sometimes is valuable for our productivity.
Thank you so much for that. I couldn't agree more. Social media breaks, very important for anyone, whether freelancer or not. So I'm going to take one question, a live question from the audience. I saw Naturinda's hand was up. Emmanuel, I don't know if you still want to ask that question. We're coming to the end of the event. Emmanuel, if you're there, please speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So I have a question, but I want to first give a preamble to my question such that it is well understood, and it goes to Matthew. One of the things that I've noticed over time is that people are worried about AI taking their jobs, AI thinking beyond human intelligence, and AI doing incredible things that we may not be able to do as humans in future. So my question is that how do we as humans make AI work for us and stay ahead of artificial intelligence such that at some point it doesn't really start working against us, but it keeps in line and working for the benefit of humanity? Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Yeah, good question. A lot of people are talking about this and concerned about this. And I actually, in your question, I found that it seemed like there was two questions or two concerns. One is about jobs, will I continue to have a job? But you almost then at the end started touching about, how do we make sure it works for humanity? What is the existential risk on this? Again, I'm an eternal optimist. I think that what we've seen is that AI can do a lot of the things for us, and a lot of kind of the grunt work, the dirty work, the hard work for us. But there's still a lot of room for humans to kind of interact and figure out what to do with that. Now, if we get to a point where AI is taking everybody's jobs and really nobody's working anymore, then we've kind of come to a place where AI is creating so much wealth and so much value that we should be in a good space as humanity, as long as it hasn't fully got out of control, as long as we haven't kind of come to this existential risk. I don't personally think that we will come to that. I think that there's so much, it's not like a thing where you have different companies competing and one wants an existential risk and one doesn't. Everybody wants to kind of solve the existential risk. And I believe that working together, we will solve that. So if there is, there's not much we can do about it, but I think that we are going to work together, and I think that's going to be okay. In terms of jobs, I think that there's definitely some jobs that will be heavily impacted by this. And the question will just be, can people shift from that job into kind of that upskilling, kind of the next version of that job? A job, for example, I'll give an example of like an executive assistant or a personal assistant. I think a lot of the grunt work in that job will be able to be done by AI, scheduling meetings, typing up notes to meetings, kind of like managing an email inbox. But if that person can kind of continue to work and upskill themselves, what it really does is frees them up to work on kind of more high-level things. If they can kind of become a chief of staff to that person that they are the executive assistant to, become a thought partner, help them kind of manage projects for them and actually do stuff for them, then they'll be able to upskill, as they go. And I think that's really kind of where we go. It's helping people kind of get to that next level. So to be very practical, if you're kind of in a spot where you're like, I don't know if my job is going to be here or if it's going to be disrupted, my biggest piece of advice is start exposing yourself to technology now. start experimenting with it so that you know how to use it. I mean, Dorothy talked about this. You know, Dorothy could be in a spot where she could be saying, I'm a freelance copywriter. If I, you know, just sit, you know, my job could be going away from AI. But she's dove in and she's learned how to kind of upskill herself, both using the technology to kind of work at that higher level and say, I'm going to do a lot more for my clients. And I think that's what we all need to do is you know, dive in, continue to learn, expose yourself to these new technologies so that you can kind of upskill yourself. I'll just end with one quote that's been like kind of popular on the internet, on Twitters, on the Twitters, which is that it's, you know, it's not AI that's going to replace, it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's a person using AI that will take your job. It's basically somebody who knows how to use it better than you. So making sure you're that person that knows how to use it.
Right. Thank you. That's a good conclusion to our Q&A. It's not AI that is going to take your job. It's the person that is using it. So if you're in this audience today, it's about time for you to start learning how to use this AI, because you won't lose the job if you know how to use it. So with that, we have concluded our Q&A. I think the last two questions that we had speak to my next comment, which is if you'd like to learn more about digital freelancing, Baobab has a course called Freelancing in the Digital Economy with numerous resources for everyone to get started. And the link is going to be shared in chat for you, so you can check it out. Has all the resources you need, online platforms you can engage with. And these are all recommendations given by people who are currently doing this work. And Dorothy is one of them. So take a look at that course. It will give you all the resources that you need to get started. And once again, a huge thank you to our panelists for joining us today and sharing all the insightful information on the future of work in Africa and how we can better prepare for the opportunities it has to offer. Many thanks to the Baobab team for putting together this event, fabulous event and discussion. Thank you to everyone for coming to the event and for your attention and participation throughout the conversation with our amazing panelists. I hope you picked up a couple of lessons from all the panelists, especially the last one from Matthew. And if you enjoyed this event, become a member of the Baobab platform so you can enjoy all of the exciting courses, events, opportunities. More of such events are organized, so be sure to check out the Baobab platform. And please take a couple of minutes to complete our post-webinar survey to share your feedback and suggestions for future events and programming. That link will come into your inbox once we close off this event, so be sure to give us feedback and, you know, suggest ways we can better improve for future events. Thank you so much and have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, depending on where you're checking in from today. It was nice having you all.
Beyond the skies, you and I, we're breaking bounds on Baobab.